Across these 50 states that we call united, there are few cities more beautiful than Seattle. Or so I've heard. I've never been there.
Neither have I, but I've heard great things.
See, other podcasts would pretend they'd personally caught fish at the Fulton Market or gazed at Mount Rainier from the top of the Space Needle, but not us. Credibility is everything.
It sure is. When we talked about the history of Seattle soccer last fall in our Best 11 of American Soccertowns, you needed to know that it was legit history. And we weren't just reading Wikipedia to you.
That's literally one of the mantras we have as we put these shows together. It has to be more than you'd find on Wikipedia. Not that you'd find much about the history of Seattle soccer on there. You got to dig into the archives and reach out to Seattle natives and soccer experts like Frank McDonald, historian and executive director for the Washington State Legends of Soccer.
Which is such a valuable resource for anyone interested in the game in the Pacific Northwest. We have a link in the show notes.
Last fall, we got our feet virtually on the ground in the Emerald City. And that's what we did again for this little check-in as Seattle prepares to host the World Cup next month. And what we found probably won't surprise you. Like every other U.S. host city, Seattle was excited to be selected, but over the past year, events have transpired and expectations have shifted.
In February of 2025, the city was predicting $1 billion of economic impact. That was going to surpass the biggest Seattle weekend ever in July of 23, when 2 Taylor Swift concerts, a Mariners Blue Jays game, the Capitol Hill Block Party, the Bite of Seattle, and 2 conventions brought nearly 900,000 visitors to the city.
As Frank McDonald pointed out, Seattle hasn't hosted a lot of big events, but it is a proud city that wants to show itself off to the world.
It's also given the University of Washington, as well as the tech and aerospace industries, a pretty diverse city. While it's still majority white, its Hispanic, Asian, and multiracial populations have skyrocketed, relatively, over the last 25 years. And it has the largest black population in the Pacific Northwest. It should be a cool place to visit for the whole alphabet of group game countries, from Belgium to Qatar.
Most U.S. fans have probably circled June 19th on their calendar. That's when the U.S. will play Australia on the new grass that has been laid down in Seattle Stadium, a.k.a. Lumen Field, but there are no corporate sponsor names allowed on the stadiums during the World Cup.
Yeah, only FIFA's official sponsors get paid.
Oh, you said Gianni Infantino not allowed to make any money.
Johnny, come on, back in the cage. Now, that U.S.-Australia game is a big one. It may even be a must-win for both countries. But there's another game scheduled in Seattle that's been in the spotlight recently. Egypt versus Iran on June 26th.
It's a game Iran doesn't want to play. They want all their games moved from the U.S. for understandable reasons. And the U.S. response has ranged from, yeah, that's a good idea, you won't be safe here, to maybe Italy should take your place in the tournament. And the latest development in the Trump administration's project to look as weak as possible in every possible way is that it denied the Iranian team permission to stay overnight in the U.S. during the World Cup.
According to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, her government was approached by FIFA to host the Iranian team, which was supposed to have its base in Tucson, Arizona, but will now be in Tijuana.
So just a couple weeks before the World Cup starts, the Iranian Soccer Federation is rushing to get its new accommodations set up. And that's where the Iranian team will have to fly back to immediately after its game against Egypt up in Seattle.
This was a controversial game even before the current war, but don't call it a war. Friday the 26th at the start of Seattle Pride weekend. And Egypt and Iran both registered complaints about the timing when the schedule was released.
Yeah, the religious fundamentalists who control their governments don't accept the existence of LGBTQ people, which, hey, look what we have in common. As we record this, we still don't know if Iran will be playing. As we said back in our boycott episode about the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, 1980 United States would boycott 2026 United States. But as we get closer, it becomes more likely that the Iranian team will, despite all reservations, make the trip.
And if they do, Frank McDonald expects them to be welcomed in Seattle, which is, he's proud to say, a welcoming city. It's also one of the few host cities with a stadium in the heart of downtown, allowing fans to walk, bike, or take public transit to the games.
Redeveloped waterfront park, which looks beautiful in photos, opened last fall. It has been called the West Coast's answer to New York City's High Line, 20 acres starting at its southern end, right next to the stadium.
And you can reach the stadium by ferry or water taxi. I mean, how cool is that? Which will drop you off at Pier 50, less than a mile away. It's a short walk, which is good because there will be no cars allowed near the stadium starting 4 hours before every kickoff.
Sound Transit will also be increasing service on its light rail lines, running trains every 8 minutes on game days until 1 a.m. And they'll be adding Sounder commuter rail trains for each of Seattle's 6 matches, timed to arrive before kickoff and leave about an hour after matches conclude.
Very welcoming. But
indeed, that $1 billion of predicted revenue has been revised downwards about 10%. International visitors are canceling reservations, and, as we've discussed before, that's more of a U.S. thing than a World Cup thing. Vancouver, just over the border, is still predicting over $1 billion of revenue this summer.
So Seattle is expecting more domestic tourism, and people traveling within the country don't generally spend as much as folks coming from elsewhere, which leaves locals wondering what their bottom line will look like at the end of July.
And a lot of locals are also wondering if they'll be able to see a game themselves. As Frank told us, affordability and access are the hot buttons in this tournament. Last summer's Club World Cup ticket experience alienated a lot of people who were told they had to pay a premium to get in, only to have a flood of cheap seats hit the market at the last minute as FIFA scrambled to fill an empty stadium.
So a lot of Seattle folks were understandably wary of FIFA's World Cup lottery, where if they were lucky, they'd win the option to spend over $500 for the cheapest seat at the opening game on June 15th, when Belgium plays Egypt, at noon on a Monday. If I'm in Seattle, I'm probably waiting until that morning to see what's suddenly available.
Still, Seattle is made to host a global soccer party. It's a walkable city with great public transportation, mild summer weather, and friendly locals. And it's been a soccer town since the 1880s, when lumberjacks and timber camps and sailors in the port were kicking a ball in their precious free time.
So if you're going to Seattle, or just watching that beautiful new but temporary grass on TV, the next 9 minutes will give you a taste of how the game got from then till now. This is an American game.
The story of Soccertown number 9 begins with timber. And if you're from Portland, please skip ahead because our next Soccertown is Seattle.
Oof.
The Pacific North, I know. Sorry, everybody. The Pacific Northwest is one of the country's great historic regions. It's given us national team legends like Casey Keller, Michelle Akers, Chris Henderson, Hope Solo, DeAndre Yedlin. We could have done Portland or Seattle. We'd love to do both. So let's just call this the real prize for the Sounders beating Inter Miami in the League's Cup final.
And full disclosure, we're pretty much just telling the Seattle story as it was told to us by the remarkable Frank McDonald, who grew up in Centralia, just south of Seattle, and has made himself the preeminent historian of Seattle soccer. He also helps run the...
By the way, I call Tom a preeminent historian of American soccer a lot. Frank is legitimately the preeminent historian.
Yeah, that's the proper application of that descriptor. Love it. Thanks, Frank. He also helps run the Washington State Legends of Soccer website, which has incredible archival stuff. We'll put a link on the episode page.
Okay. Timber. Logging companies moved from the East Coast to the Pacific Northwest in the 19th century once they realized that there were, well, a lot of trees there. Immigrants followed, looking for work, and, stuck in their isolated logging camps, they'd play soccer. So the first Seattle soccer games that we know of were between rival timber companies, or if not that official, between rival timber camps.
Around the same time, in 1880, representatives of the Black Diamond Coal Mining Company near San Francisco found a very high-quality coal seam in the Washington Territory, about 30 miles south of Seattle. Guess what happened in the new mining town of Black Diamond?
Immigrants came, worked 6 days a week, and played soccer on the 7th.
Surprise, surprise. At first, the miners would just play in their camps, but in 1884, the railroad arrived so that coal could be brought to the port of Seattle. So as the new century started and leagues got going, Black Diamond teams could travel the line for games.
By 1913, the Northwest League included Black Diamond, along with teams like Celtic, Rangers, and Seattle Thistle.
The Scotch professors had made their way west.
Black Diamond would be the dominant team around Seattle until the mid-1920s, when coal prices dropped after World War I, which led to strikes, and the company soccer team was a little less of a priority, though Black Diamond would rally in the 1940s.
But as those mines struggled, shipbuilding and repair became big industries during and after the Great War. So teams like Todd Shipyards, founded in 1916, became new powerhouses.
Now, that's not to be confused with Todd Shipyards FC of the ASL in 1921. Hello again, Bullets. That one was based out of Brooklyn. See, Todd Shipyards had a lot of shipyards.
Another big company was started in Seattle in 1916, Boeing. And Boeing teams also dominated through the 1930s and helped sustain leagues through the Great Depression. But Seattle soccer wasn't all civilian and military-industrial complex. Boeing and Todd Shipyards often got beat up by Mrs. Wickman's pies.
And during World War II, as local players were drafted and rosters got thin, the team sponsored by, yes, a pie company, found a controversial way to recruit players. Charlie Managlia was the son of an Italian-born miner who coached Mrs. Wickman's Pies. One day in 1944, Charlie overheard two guys speaking Italian at a rail yard and realized they were soccer players. They were also Italian POWs. You see, as the Allies were making their way across Italy and knocking out Mussolini, 50,000 POWs were sent to the U.S., and some of them were approved for what were called Italian Service Units, or ISUs, to do custodial and support work, since so many American men were off fighting.
This was obviously controversial, at a time when Japanese Americans were in internment camps with less freedom than these Italian POWs, when black GIs were not allowed to enter restaurants that Italian POWs could eat in. And yes, Mrs. Wickman's Pies was picking up ringers and won the league in 1944.
Repeat after us. Soccer history is, for better or worse, a mirror of the larger American story.
After the war, the Hungarian Revolution brought a new wave of refugees to Seattle, and one Hungarian, Bálint Dutz, was a baker who got the contract to provide all the pastries to a little local airline called American. He started sponsoring players and in 1959 started the Seattle Hungarians, Seattle Hunkies maybe, who dominated Washington State soccer for a decade.
In the 1960s, universities finally started to compete with amateur clubs. Literally, UW, the University of Washington, started their men's varsity team, the first in the state, in 1962. But because there were no other local colleges to play, the Huskies played in the state men's league. Mike Ryan ran the program from 1966 to 76 and was a force in the development of youth soccer around Seattle. The Dublin-born Ryan wouldn't say no to anyone who loved the game, so when talented young women said they wanted to play, he entered a co-ed team in the state men's league in 1976 and soon had girls' teams producing some of the strongest players in the country, people like Michelle Akers, Sharon McMurtry, and Denise Bender.
Ryan coached a team of his Western Stars to a championship at the National Sports Festival in 1985 and included many Seattle players on the first U.S. women's national team, which we brought to the Mundialito in Italy a couple weeks later, a story we told in Episode 5.
Unfortunately, UW wouldn't make women's soccer a varsity sport until 1991, so all those women left Washington to play college soccer. As Frank McDonald put it, UW could have been UNC.
Another Seattle legend, Cliff McCrath, surpassed Ryan as a college coach, leading Seattle Pacific to 5 Division II titles and retiring second on the all-time collegiate coaching wins list. So yeah, a lot of history.
And if you're a Seattle soccer fan with a closet full of Sounders scarves, maybe now looking for a vintage Black Diamond kit, maybe some of this is new to you. But even the Sounders have a longer history than many realize. The original Sounders, and that name was picked over other options like Cascades, Evergreens, Mariners, Schooners, and Sockeyes, were in the NASL from 1974 to 83.
And the Sounders were a community team. Current Sounders coach Brian Smetzer grew up in North Seattle and signed for the Sounders out of high school in 1980. But he also has a home movie of some of the players coming to his birthday party when he was a kid.
After the Sounders made it to the Soccer Bowl in 1977, Frank McDonald, then a high school senior, reached out to the team to see if maybe they could host a clinic at his school about 90 miles south of the city. Just a few weeks after that narrow loss to the Cosmos, 4 starters from the Sounders team showed up at Centralia High School. That is how you make fans for life.
Sure is. So after the NASL folded, the Sounders chugged along in second division leagues like the APSL, the ASL, and the USL. That was until 2009 when they joined MLS. Fans were asked to choose a name for their new team. It was an online poll, and the choices were Seattle FC, Seattle Republic, and Seattle Alliance. Good thing there was no Real Seattle.
Dynamo Seattle. As we've seen so many times in this series, the soccer people were choosing to ignore their history, to sever the links to the deep roots of the game.
However, Seattle fans remembered, and the team backpedaled, adding a write-in option to the online poll. Sounders won overwhelmingly.
Since 2016, the team has been coached by local legend Brian Schmetzer, who, with his 2 brothers, grew up playing club ball on the state champion Lake City Hawks team coached by his father, Walter, an ex-pro who'd come over from Germany.
Walter ran one of the 2 main soccer stores in Seattle, Schmetzer's Sport House. That was the place you got the good stuff: Puma, Adidas, exotic European keeper pants.
The other one was called Soccer Specialties, run by a Welshman named Denzel Miskell. As Frank McDonald puts it, you'd get the off-brand stuff there, the shirts with 2 stripes. And sometimes when you went to pick up the cleats you'd ordered, there'd be a sign on the door to go find Denzel across the street at a bar called The Rendezvous. Miskell was a beloved figure in the Seattle soccer community as well.
Personally, we think every soccer town needs a Schmetzer and a Miskell.